Curtis Windom, the story behind the Winter Garden murders. Curtis Windom was convicted of killing 3 people and wounding another in Winter Garden, claiming they had become informants. Everything quickly spiraled to the extreme, just like his life at the age of 26. Could all this get any worse? After more than 30 years, he is being sentenced to death for his crimes. Governor Ron DeSantis signed Windom's death warrant for 6 p.m. on August 28th. Now Curtis Windom's daughter, is asking for his life to be spared. "I don't like the choices he's made, but he's not a bad person," she said. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Life and background. Curtis Windom was born on January 29, 1966. Windom's background revealed that he grew up in poverty and had a learning disability. As a child, he had a urinary problem and was teased by boys at school. Windom struggled in school. He took some adapted classes and eventually dropped out. Socially, Curtis had many friends, relationships with women, children he cared for, and an attitude and appearance that were important to him. The Winter Garden area was known as a high-profile drug zone. Windom was reportedly a large-scale cocaine dealer in Windom Garden. The social context in which Windom committed his crimes. Evidence at the hearing revealed that the nature of the drug culture in Winter Garden was violent and impulsive. Mr. Windom himself had previously been shot in a drive-by shooting. His home had been ransacked, and his girlfriend threatened. He had been arrested a few months before committing these crimes, and his drug trafficking partner, Kenny Thames, was tortured and murdered shortly after Mr. Windom's murders while in custody. Thames's yard was excavated for his drug money. Mr. Windom's lifestyle prior to these murders, with additional information such as Mr. Ashton's testimony about the Cookie Monster. They might have believed that Mr. Windom's borderline behavior was likely a realistic assessment of the environment in which he lived, and not the product of irrational paranoia or delusions. Mr. Windom gambled, gave away money, was generous to the community, supported his children, helped others with money and groceries, and bought equipment for sports teams. In addition, he slept with up to 3 women in a day. Windom had 2 girlfriends and children in both places. He had been promiscuous, and he was dealing drugs. Mr. Windom told her he had drunk a 6-pack of beer the night before the shooting. While this certainly doesn't seem to be considered excessive alcohol consumption, these activities seem equally consistent with those of a narcissistic drug dealer. Windom was a cocaine dealer, and Windom suspected that most of his victims were informants or on the verge of becoming informants or snitches. His girlfriend, Valerie Davis, was sleeping with someone else, and she could have been an informant or snitch against Windom. It's possible to discuss Windom's life before the murders without mentioning drugs because they were an integral part of his life. Windom had been arrested for drugs, and had also had a fight with a girlfriend and was arrested for it. There were other examples of poor judgment and violent behavior, including altercations with Valerie. Windom recounted on one occasion that Windom shaved her head and hit her when he thought Ella had been unfaithful. However, Windom could also be generous and sweet. The fluctuations suggest he was a bit of a fragile guy. Could all the offenses be drug-related? This is Windom's motivation, or motive for committing the crimes. The victims had spoken to police about the drug dealings, and Windom had been concerned about this before the murders. In the days leading up to the incident, Windom appeared disheveled and not clean or tidy, and noticeably so, and more aroused and less able to relax and think clearly. Windom had a chronic sleep problem. There were times when he was more functional than others. He suffered from mania, depressive illness, and hypersexuality, sleeping with 3 women in one day at once. This continued with mania, spending money, and gambling. Windom had some basis to believe that people were out to get him. Then there was a phone call where someone spoke to Valeria and indicated that Curtis was going to be murdered at some point. There was a threatening call. Curtis didn't know who it was, who it might be, and he he started thinking more and more that someone was trying to kill him. Windom and Johnny Lee were close friends. Windom suspected Johnny Lee. However, it became increasingly so, and Curtis knew that Johnny Lee was carrying a gun. Someone suggested Windom that it was Johnny Lee who was trying or wanted to kill him. Valerie Davis, his partner in the drug business, was going to inform her on him or somehow get him into more trouble, possibly sending him to prison, would be a reason, even for a non-brain damaged person who harbors feelings of anger and resentment. Mary Jackson, who worked as a programmer analyst for HRS, told Windom about a rumor that his girlfriend Valerie was going to turn him in. Windom had been under a lot of pressure for quite some time before the shootings. 2 years earlier, Windom had been shot in the leg on a street corner, and the woman next to him had been murdered. That seemed to have a really significant impact. The incident really shook him up. He was more nervous afterward. He was worried he would be killed. The woman next to him died, which is usually a pretty traumatic event for anyone, even if they live in a dangerous neighborhood. The Winter Garden Murders. This tragic event occurred in the city of Winter Garden, west of Orange County, Florida. On the morning of February 7, 1992, and before the day is out, Curtis Windom will have killed 3 people and 1 will have been saved by luck. Jack Luckett had spoken with Windom the morning of the shooting. During the conversation, Windom asked Jack if Johnny Lee had won money at the racetrack, and Jack replied, "Yeah, $114. Windom said that Johnny Lee owed him $2,000. When he found out that Johnny had won money at the racetrack, he told Jack, "My Black, you're gonna read about me." He also said he was going to kill Johnny Lee. That same day, at 11:51 a.m., according to the sales slip and the clerk, Windom purchased a .38 caliber revolver and a box of 50 .38 caliber cartridges from Abner Yance at a Walmart in Ocoee. Mr. Yance recalled the sale and noted that there was nothing unusual about Windom and that he was very calm. A few minutes after the purchase, Windom pulled up in his car, exclaimed, "My goddamn money, Black." He pulled out his gun, leaned over the passenger seat, and shot Johnny Lee, who was talking to 2 women, and Jack Luckett on the sidewalk. After he fell to the ground, Windom got out of the car, stood over him. Windom searched Lee's pockets for money after killing him. Windom then ran toward the apartment where Valerie Davis, his girlfriend, and the mother of one of his children lived. Windom occasionally lived with Valerie Davis. She was on the phone, and her friend Cassandra Hall had just arrived at the apartment and was present when Windom shot Valerie in the left breast, seconds after arriving at the apartment and without provocation. From the apartment, Windom went outside, met Kenneth Williams on the street, and shot him in the chest at very close range. Mr. Williams saw the gun but didn't think Windom would shoot him. Just before he was shot, he turned slightly, deflecting the bullet slightly. Although he was hospitalized for about 30 days and the wound was serious, he did not die. He said Windom did not look normal. His eyes were bulging out as if he had been snapped. By then, Valerie's mother had learned that her daughter had been shot, so she left work in her car and drove down the street. Windom saw her stop at the stop sign, approached the car, said something to her, and then shot her, hitting her twice and killing her. From there, Windom ended up behind Brown's bar, where 3 men, including his brother, were trying to take the gun from him. The murders occurred on February 7, 1992, the same day he was arrested. Trial and sentencing. On March 3, 1992, Curtis Windom was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder of Lee, Davis, and Lubin, and attempted first-degree murder of Williams. Curtis Windom, at trial, chose to retain a private attorney, Mr. Roy Edward Leinster, who represented Windom in the 1992 homicides. He was also assisted by another attorney, Kurt Barch. Bach testified that although Leinster had a brilliant legal mind and extensive knowledge of the law, he drank excessively, was forgetful, and inattentive to his cases. Leinster trembled profusely, which Barch associated with a symptom or consequence of alcohol abuse. Mr. Windom argued that Mr. Leinster should have found a witness to prove that he shot the final victim, Mary Lubin, in self-defense. However, no witnesses appeared at the evidentiary hearing. Eddie James Windom testified that he was present when Ms. Lubin arrived by car, but stated that he went into the bushes and did not see whether Lubin had a gun. He did not know how many shots were fired afterward. Mr. Leinster's background investigation failed to meet reasonable professional standards. On August 28, 1992, the jury found the defendant guilty on all counts of the indictment. On September 23, 1992, following the advisory verdict, the jury, by a majority of 12-0, voted to impose the death penalty on all 3 convictions for the 3 murders. The jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, and the judge followed the recommendation, sentencing Windom to death on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. Windom was also sentenced to 22 consecutive years in prison for attempted first-degree murder. The court also found several mitigating factors, both legal and non-legal, but determined they were insufficient to rule out the death penalty. The Florida Supreme Court upheld Windom's convictions and death sentences on direct appeal. Death rebellion and appeals. Florida has broken the state's previous execution record since the reinstatement of the death penalty. The previous record was 8 executions in 2014. Curtis Windom, 59, is scheduled to be executed on August 28, 2025 at 6 p.m. He was convicted of murdering 3 people in Orange County in 1992. He was sentenced to death in November of the same year. It will become Florida's 11th execution, pending the executioner's call. Windom's daughter, Curtesia Windom, is now pushing to have his execution halted. Curtesia Windom, who lives in Georgia, said she tries to visit her father in Florida State Prison once a month. She says, "I have to make the most of the little time I have with him." Curtesia Windom says she has forgiven her father, who killed her mother and grandmother. Forgiveness comes with time, and 33 years is a long time. "I have forgiven my father myself," Curtesia Windom said. "Executing him will never bring back my mother, my grandmother, Mr. Johnny Lee. It will never right the wrongs he has done." The courts will hear final appeals before then. Several petitions are circulating, requesting that the execution be halted. Background and prosecutorial history. Windom had no significant history of prior criminal activity. He had a record of domestic violence incidents, which also involved the victim, Valerie Davis. Windom had been arrested on December 6, 1991, following the execution of a search warrant. During the search of Windom and Valerie Davis's home, they found over $1,000 in cash. A confidential informant had previously given Windom $1,000. Both Windom and Valerie Davis were arrested. The confidential informant evidently purchased 2 cakes of cocaine for $1,000. Returning to August 2, 1991, Windom was arrested on another drug charge. Someone in the community turned him in and made it more difficult for him to earn a living.